By the way, what do you think about the Stanley Cup Finals so far?
Kind of going for the most part how I thought it was gonna go. Florida does look like the better team, but Edmonton looks a little tougher to beat because they just have that it factor. They seem to have a, I don't want to go as far as say never say die attitude, but they definitely have a bit more of a competitive spirit than they did through the first 3 games or 4 games of last year's finals. So I don't know. I want to say Florida's got it, but I'm still thinking Edmonton might pull it out in Game 6 and at least force a seventh back at home.
Yeah, me too. Me too, man. I can't like objectively, I don't really care who wins. I mean, it's a very entertaining final nonetheless for me. But yeah, like quietly, like I kind of just want Connor McDavid to get his cup, so like that narrative can stop, and like the monkey can get off the back of all of like Canada, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, no, I'm right there with you. The get the monkey off their back, let them enjoy something they haven't enjoyed in over 30 years. It'd be nice.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of when it comes to performing and like performing up to your best and just being your best. It kind of reminded me of this advice I once got from a dear relative right before I was going to college. You want to hear the advice?
What's that advice?
Many college students have gone to college and gotten hooked on drugs, marijuana, and alcohol. Listen, stop trying to be somebody else. Don't try to be someone else. Be yourself and know that's good enough. Don't try to be someone else. Don't try to be like someone else. Don't try to act like someone else. Be yourself. Be secure with yourself. Rely and trust upon your own decisions, on your own beliefs. You understand the things that I've taught you. Not to drink alcohol, not to use drugs. Don't use that cocaine or marijuana because that stuff is highly addictive. When people become weed heads, they become sluggish, lazy, stupid, and unconcerned. Sluggish, lazy, stupid, and unconcerned. That's all marijuana does to you, okay? This is mom. Unless you're taking it under doctor's orders, control, then it's regulated. Don't smoke marijuana. Don't consume alcohol. Don't get in the car with someone who is inebriated. This is mom. Call me. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, your class of 2025.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that is we go from Ukraine to Uganda, but the long way around. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I'm the one who is immensely impressed with his ability to do that intro, Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the equally impressed member of the class of 2010 or 2014, depending on what education you're talking about, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you wondering what it is we do here on Hey, Listen to This, it's right there in the intro. Hey, listen to this. Every week, me and my co-host, Ryan, we go over an album that we decide is worth listening to for whatever reason, whether it be a matter of recency, bias, or a theme that we're doing for the month. And this month, we're going into albums based on Pride Month. Ryan, what did we talk about last time out?
We talked about the second studio album from the group Wham! And for those of you who are like, what is a Wham? Well, go back one episode, go listen to that episode, and you'll be educated what a Wham is. But, just walking away from the episode, I was really happy that we were able to do that review. gave me another education into the world of pop, specifically within the landscape of like 80s pop. Specifically around like George Michael and like what Wham was able to do at the time. But yeah, another great chapter in our history, and another great bookmark into our Pride Month celebration here in 2025.
Agreed, agreed. I'm glad you enjoyed the album as much too. I mean, if nothing else, it gave you a chance to listen to Careless Whisper multiple times, and I know you're happy about that. But this week we are continuing our Pride Month discussion, and we are shifting into the world of R&B and hip hop. Ryan, what do you have cooking for us this week?
So this week we are traveling to the year of our Lord 2016. Remember 2016, man? What a awesome time to be alive. And
Sure.
we're going to be covering the second studio album, and quite honestly, the latest studio album by one Frank Ocean. And for those of you who are like, what is a Frank Ocean? Well, I mean, I guess that's kind of fair. He was pretty popular from like the 2010s into like early 2020, and like he did have that one random Coachella like appearance, but it didn't go over well because the performance was too kind of out there and it wasn't impactful. But just drilling down really quick what a Frank Ocean is and how does Frank Ocean fit into the LGBTQ plus spectrum. Frank Ocean, highly celebrated American singer, songwriter, and record producer. Really known for his unique blend of R&B, soul, and experimental music, and as well as his deeply personal and introspective lyrics. It's funny. The one episode we kind of joked about, post R&B. The album that we're talking about today, Blonde. It's post R&B, so
A little bit.
yeah. So I don't think I actually said like the actual album that we're covering today, but yeah, we're covering "Blonde" by Frank Ocean, released in 2016. So Frank got his start. Well, not really his start, but first gained widespread attention with his critical acclaim mixtape Nostalgia Ultra back in 2011. And then he followed that up with his Grammy-winning debut studio album Channel Orange in 2012. And so, prior to that, there was like a little bit of a stint with like Odd Future, but I'm not really much of an Odd Future head myself. And what made Frank stand out on his own was his solo material, specifically how well and how impactful Channel Orange was at the time in 2012. I mean, it was one of the albums that it was the album that hooked me into what Frank Ocean was doing overall. I remember watching the Grammys with you during that time, and just watching his performance. I'm like, wow, okay, that's a little out of place, but I can dig it. So, what led Frank to go from Channel Orange to Blonde? So, it was a bit of a complex period. Following Channel Orange, he had a 4-year hiatus, and there was some groundswell about what his next album, his next release was going to be, and on top of this, he was looking to gain independence from Def Jam Records. So, Ocean, very smartly released a visual album called Endless back in August 2016, which, thanks to him releasing Endless on Apple Music, that allowed him to independently release Blonde the next day with full creative control. And so, during the writing period of Blonde, he was engaged in a lot of deep personal reflection, exploring themes of memory and identity, while evolving his sound to incorporate diverse influences beyond R&B, hence the post-R&B, a little genre thing I mentioned earlier. And during the writing process, he had to overcome creative blocks by embracing a non-linear storytelling approach. That does lead to Blonde's fragmented yet cohesive style. And yeah, on top of that, the album's physical release was accompanied by the Boys Don't Cry zine, offering further insight to his artistic vision. Blonde ultimately emerged as a masterpiece born from personal growth, strategic independence, and an expansive creative vision. So that's a little bit about what Blonde is as a whole, what Frank Ocean is as a whole, and like what basically took Frank Ocean from Odd Future fame into public consciousness, the public sphere. Now, how does Frank Ocean fit into this Pride Month celebration that we are diving into in this year of our Lord 2025? Well, back in 2016, Frank Ocean came out as bi with an open letter on Tumblr sharing his first love was a man. So, yeah, Frank Ocean is bi, and he definitely does fit into the spectrum here, part of the Rainbow Coalition community. And yeah, before I kick it over to the topic of what my background with Frank Ocean is, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Matt. What is your experience with Mr. Ocean that has a first name of Frank?
My experience with Frank Ocean, as has been kind of the theme for most of this month, unfortunately or otherwise, is not really much. And in the case of Against Me, it's more or less just me not really following the band. But at the same time, the last couple artists that we've done, it seems like they haven't released a whole lot in general. Wham only had 2 main studio albums. Frank Ocean only has a handful of albums. I do remember listening to Channel Orange while I was in college and relatively liking it, but not liking it to the point where I have actually heard it ever since. I did not listen to Blonde up until this review, so I was safely walking into this review with a bit of a blind eye. Like I had not really an idea what to expect. I mean, I kind of had inklings based off of the smoothness of what I remember of Channel Orange, not to mention the fact that he's an Odd Future guy, and I've listened to a decent amount of Tyler, and I'm starting to slowly get into the likes of Earl Sweatshirt of all people. But in the case of Frank Ocean, I really haven't dug into him too much, if I'm being perfectly honest.
And that's totally fair. I mean, that's the kind of the well, I don't want to say it's entirely the point of our show here, but it's episodes like this that kind of show as grounds for us to share music that we love with one another. Now, my experience with Mr. Ocean, like I alluded to earlier in my intro to what is a Frank Ocean, right when Channel Orange came out, this was one of the artists that I was exposed to thanks to, the internet's busiest music nerd, Anthony Fantano, from the Needle Drop YouTube channel. And, I remember really, really, really liking that album when it came out, and when I was listening to it. Never really got into Nostalgia Ultra. I think I might have listened to it once or twice. And, yeah. I would go back to I around the time Channel Orange came out, I would go back to it every so often, but it wouldn't be a mainstay of mine in terms of rotation in the 2012 era of my life. However, during the kind of groundswell and all the anticipation for the release of Blonde, I kind of got caught up in all the hype behind it. And when it did eventually, come out to the world, I remember really, really, really liking it, and just really just vibing to it, and really just enjoying what the material had on its had to offer, and yeah, and then I mean, I would say Blonde lasted in my rotation in my listening for about like a year, and then after that, it basically kind of like dissipated off. I mean, I would maybe occasionally go back to the album itself. One of my favorite podcasts, Dissect, they did a whole season on Blonde. So, but I kind of don't remember specifically what they talked about in that season. So, like, I'm not referencing any of the stuff that they mentioned in that season of Dissect. Just going to be coming off my own original thoughts and feelings and, musings from genius.com here. But yeah, Frank's a cool guy in my opinion. If he wouldn't come out with another studio album or another album in general, I would be disappointed. But yeah, that's basically my experience. You think we are ready to kick this review off by diving into the opening track here, Nikes?
Yeah, I think we are ready to talk about some Nikes to kick off Blonde by Mr. Frank Ocean.
So, the way I'm going to propose to you that how we do this review here is that there are a lot of shorter tracks, but they're not really labeled as like skits. So like, whenever we do like hip hop tracks, we often like say like, or like interlude tracks in our reviews, we say, okay, whoever's like turn it is to, discuss the next track, they discuss the interlude or the skit, and they discuss like the following track after that. I'm going to just say we go back and forth between each track and not really kind of get caught up because like, there's some tracks that warrant more discussion than others despite the length. So yeah, you're cool with that because I saw the head nod there, and the listeners out there who aren't subscribed to our dark web Patreon feed,
our black market cast.
Yeah. So, kicking off the discussion of Nikes here. In terms of rankings, bottom 3, top 3, middle 3, side 3, left 3, right 3. I don't have a bottom 3 with Blonde here. I do have a top 3. Nikes did not land in a top 3 spot whatsoever, but it's going to go in a bucket of tracks for me that could have easily popped into a top 3 kind of spot because, like, coming right out of the gate with Nikes, you kind of get like a sense of what Frank Ocean is going to be offering for the most part for Blonde here. Like you get like that smooth synth and that drum machine beat that work out so well. I like how the track is introduced, and like also the use of processed vocals to start everything off. It's an interesting and a little bit of a bold choice, in my opinion. It works well, considering a point about the processed vocals that I'm going to be talking about later on in the review here. But I like how it starts out. And, the whole song is basically about Frank dealing with the trappings of indulging in, like, the high life in terms of like the materialistic life and like how to like basically navigate his newfound fame. Like, like literally the opening set of lyrics are these bitches want Nikes. They're looking for a check. Tell them it ain't likely. She said she needed a ring like Carmelo. Like basically he's landed himself into like, hedonism, like, people that just want stuff for the sake of wanting stuff. And this is Frank just trying to, like, deal with how life is in terms of, like, celebrity culture. And, like, this really does come pronounced in the way about, like, halfway up where the vocals change up. You no longer get that processed vocals. You get Frank coming out with a rap, and, dude, Frank's delivery halfway through in this track is so good. And I kind of like how it almost seems like the second verse starts out as like a round where he's just repeating the phrase, we'll let you guys prophesize. We'll let you guys prophesize. And then, like, it goes on from there. I thought that was an excellent touch. And one of my favorite you know, sections lyrically is found in the second verse where Frank is talking about living so the last night feels like a past life. Speaking of the don't know what got into people, devil be possessing homies, demons trying to body jump. Why do you think I'm in this bitch wearing a yarmulke? And basically, Frank's identifying like there's a spirit that that infects people and it like affects his friends and just jumping body to body, and Frank is just trying to hold on to a religious belief, hence the yarmulke line there, and trying to stay grounded in who he is as a person. That was a great line. I do like that a lot. And outside of that, like the strings that were doing arpeggios in the background throughout the track, so good. And yeah, like this is an excellent way to kick off the whole album for me.
So, as far as my rankings, I have a top 3 and a bottom 2 for Blonde. And for Nikes, I'm going to start with the positives. I agree with you that the beat is great. It's a very nice beat. It's a smooth beat. Definitely has that R&B backing that's, going to make itself known throughout this whole album. I do agree with you that the way he sounds on the second verse is very good. I do think it gets a hair wordy at times, but not enough to like really upset me or throw me off. I do like the outro of this track. It is a very nice way to ease things on out. And my favorite part of the entire track is in the first verse, whenever he talks about R.I.P. Trayvon Martin. Like, that line is phenomenal. Like, basically saying, hey, this guy here, he's dead and he looks a lot like me, so even if I go for all that high life stuff, what's it going to mean if someone sees me as just another kid looking for trouble, And I thought that was a great line. However, this does land as my second worst song on the whole album, or my second least favorite, I should say, because I do not agree with you about the processed vocals. I did not think that was a great way to start this album off at all. And I think what really got me was the fact that I understand to an extent the idea of having pitched vocals as this sort of outside conscience thing, this sort of this inner monologue. I know most prominently a few years down the line, one of my favorite albums of all time, Igor by Tyler the Creator, did this to a T, like perfectly. Like it used the pitch vocals to describe an outside principle or an inside principle to a strong degree. But the problem with it on this track is the fact that it's both pitched and it feels processed on top of that. And so what you hear is this almost like inescapable warbling effect that I just could not shake away from my hearing of this track. Which again, it's a shame because there's so many good lines in those opening ones, like the Carmelo line, like the Trayvon Martin line, that for it to be buried behind basically two forms of processing, one to shift the vocals up and one to make it seem like out there, really ruins this track to a great degree. Now, once that goes away, the track's fine. Like, the track is solid. The track is good. But I just thought the way to start with the really processed vocals turned me off a lot. So, unfortunately, Nikes does land in my bottom 2 at number 2.
I'm curious to see like what you think about the rest of the album, because those process and manipulated vocals do come back, like at several spots. But as we travel across them, we'll discuss it track by track as we do. But yeah, I can respect your opinion there. I mean, like, again, the process vocals, the way that it starts out is not for everyone, and yeah, I respect it, man. So that being said, you ready to boogie on over to Ivy?
Yes, boogieing on over to Ivy. Now, this track feels more like a track that sets up the true overall of the album. I know Nikes had the great R&B beat, but this one feels a little bit more dialed back to a very smooth, very floaty, very vibey R&B. And This is a really good track. It did not land in my top 3, but it's a really good track because, first of all, what I liked about it is the fact that the lyrics, very heartfelt, very touching to the idea that, he's wanting to get this out, and, he's having recollections and trying to say, hey, this is how we were, and now look at us. I thought the chorus was great, and I really liked how the singing on the chorus is lower than that on the verses. Like, that is something I really have not heard in any type of song before, or at least not that many songs as of late, where the singing on the chorus, the main part of the song, is a lot more laid back than it is on the verses. Like, I thought that was a really nice switch of pace, and I really did appreciate Frank's idea on that. Now, you mentioned how the shifting vocals do come back, the process vocals do come back, and they do come back on the outro of this song, and I did notice that. I was kind of like, but that didn't hamper it so much. I thought this track probably lands maybe somewhere in my top 5, honestly. Like, this was a really solid track, and I did dig it quite a bit.
I'm glad, man. And for me, like, it's gonna be interesting discussing, like, a lot of the aspects of the album here, because, like, it's, for the most part, it's just Frank singing along with, like, some production. I mean, like, that's basically an R&B album to a T. But I think there's plenty enough meat on the bone to, like, really dive into stuff. I'm right there with you in terms of, like, just appreciating the fact of the change in the emotion and the sound between, like, the chorus and the verses. Like, I thought that was very impactful. I really did like that. And especially considering that the context of this song, it's basically dealing with, like, a lot of the, topics and themes that we're going to come across in Blonde Heartbreak, and, like, somebody, like, having unrequited love, and specifically with here, we do explore elements of what a homosexual love, like the delicate nature of it, and, like, just having to deal with, like, how things are one way when you're a kid as compared to, like, nowadays. And, like, this is exemplified in the second verse with this line that I really did like: "You ain't a kid no more. We'll never be those kids again. It's not the same. Ivory's illegal. Don't you remember?" And, like, for me, like, you get a lot of themes in this track here about, like, Frank dealing with heartbreak. Like, literally the first set of lyrics you get is, "I thought that I was dreaming when you said you loved me." Like, sprinkled throughout the rest of the track here, you get very other, like, illustrations of, like, heartbreak and just dealing with, like, somebody who doesn't want you anymore. And the way that I just walked away from the track is just, this is Frank dealing with, like, just, like, dealing with a heartbreak with somebody who you used to have feelings for as a kid, but things have changed and things can't go back to the way that they were. But yeah, like, it's a pretty good track. And I mean, it just, maybe it doesn't do enough to crack into a top 3, because I do like it a lot, especially in the lyrical context. And, like, a little bit of a background behind this track here. So Frank's big single off of Channel Orange was the song "Thinking About You." Well, the song "Ivy" has been seen as the sequel to Frank's song "Thinking About You." So, like, just a little fun fact about that. I thought that was kind of cool, and it kind of did encourage me to go back to Channel Orange and specifically checking out "Thinking About You." But yeah, I do like "Ivy." I feel like, for the most part, it's kind of as, like, it is pretty much an album track, though. Like, it's a very good album track, and it does deliver in its context. But yeah, it's good on its own right, though.
I agree. I think you nailed the apex of it. It's a really good album track, but doesn't do enough to elevate itself to the point of standing out. It's good, but it's not great. So I am ready to move on to the next track, which is Pink and White, if you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get a bit of a change up with Pink and White, and it's most notable in like the whole overall feel of it. Like, the other tracks were pretty experimental. They didn't really have so much of a defined type signature, but here we get a three a three feel to the T, and it the whole production and everything executes it to a almost like a perfect kind of feel. Like the piano, the bass, and Frank's vocals are all really doing great things to establish a groove. And like also in the second verse, you get a faint acoustic guitar that does do well to like add a texture to the production. I do like that. Beyonce's featured in spurts here, not so prominently, but I did appreciate her vocal, backgrounds there. And yeah, just overall, like it's another beautiful song, especially towards like the end, where you get the swells. Like I really did like that. And overall, though, the song from a lyrical context is a tribute to a friend of Frank's who passed away, and this friend had a huge impact in Frank's life and shaping who he was as a person. And like one of my favorite lines in the track is found in the first verse, and that line is, "That's the way every day goes. Every time we've no control. If the sky is pink and white, if the ground is black and yellow." So like that's basically just saying, hey, like even if the sky is pink and white, we really don't have any control over like how life is gonna go. All you can do is control what is like in front of you in your day to day life. And I did like that. But yeah, in terms of anything else that makes this track stand out, I mean, Frank's vocal delivery is fine here. Nothing really to stand outish. I just think for me, the main features of this track that make me really did like it is like that three feel, and basically just the way of the lyrics telling a good story about a friend who passed away for Frank.
So I agree with a lot of the things you said, particularly about the instruments. With the way the three feel goes, the piano is fantastic, the guitar is fantastic, the bass, like you said, does a really good job. I agree. Beyonce seems to be here in name only. Like I know she's on the track, but at the same time, I know that you can hear her voice relatively faintly. But this track, what put it over the top for me, because I do have it in my top 3 at number 2, is the fact that not only does the three feel with the piano and the faint acoustic guitar work on its own, but I feel like Frank very much wrote the lyrics around that. Like he's talking about, it has a very summer vibe feel to it, like a summer to remember type of feel throughout the verses. And for it to match the music, like there's gonna be a lot of uses of the words summer, pool, and solo throughout this album. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's just fact. And to me, out of the songs that do that, this one just stands out as the best for the musical acumen that it presents. Like it just feels like a really old school, like retrofitted vintage type of R&B beat to it, like something you'd hear, like not something you'd hear in the 50s, but something you'd hear from someone who wanted to be in the 1950s. And I thought that's pretty good. I thought that worked very well to this song's advantage. Like you said, Frank sounds great on this track, and yeah, I dug this quite a bit. I have it at number 2.
I can really dig that, man, and maybe catch me on a different day. Like this track, if I had to rank it within the context of the album and gun to my head, I would say it would be an easy number 4 for me. But yeah, I'm glad that you appreciate it as much as I did. Well, I guess you appreciate it a little bit more, but I digress. So you ready to move over to be yourself?
Yes, Be Yourself, one of the first mini sections of this album. If you want to hear the lyrics to it, you could just forward back to the intro of this review, in which Ryan recites them word for word. Very well done on your part. I dig it. I dig the little switch up. I'm not sure what it's supposed to represent. I'm sure it's going to be explained in context in just a little bit here. But I do know that this is one of Frank Ocean's, I want to say, relatives or neighbor friends or someone that he knew growing up that did the vocals for this. The only thing about it I kind of caught myself not appreciating the first time around, but understanding the second time around, it's just that little, because it's very browbeating, but in a very calming way, like be yourself, don't do drugs, don't smoke weed, don't drink alcohol. But then it nudges at that little, unless it's doctor prescribes, like. Like, and I'm not gonna go down this rabbit hole of, oh, the doctors are out to get you, drink raw milk. I'm not going to do that, but I did find that to be a bit of a interesting diversion from the very browbeating nature. It's just like, definitely exception, definitely. It's just like, I don't know, but that's just a small nitpick. I dug this. It was fun.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, pound for pound, especially with the like diversion right out of left field. It'd be like, actually, if a doctor is recommending to do it, you can do it because it's regulated. Because then, like, you can go down a rabbit hole. Like, what if a doctor is like, recommending like cocaine? You can regulate cocaine, and it's good in small doses. But like, I mean, I don't think we will ever live in the reality where cocaine is legal or like there's medical cocaine.
Ryan.
Anyways, I digress.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Don't jinx that. Don't jinx that.
Oh, all right. So yeah, the person who's leaving this voice message though for Frank, her name is Rosie Watson, and she is the mother of one of Frank Ocean's childhood friends. And Watson herself is typically she typically refers to Frank, calls him her nephew, and this could, but I mean, this could kind of like I feel like the use of mom at the end of the interlude here, it's used a bit casual, but like if she's calling Frank her nephew, but she's looking to herself as mom, that could be the casual use of it. But yeah, I'm right there with you. Cool interlude. Kind of weird where like you go left, you take an extreme left turn and be like, actually, and then go right back on course. So yeah, I feel like upon further reflection, and I'm gonna dive right into the next track here, Solo. Like the way that we find Frank in the track here, Solo, he's basically dealing with his loneliness. And dealing with like the anxieties and everything like that. He's thinking about like maybe getting high to deal with like just the way that the world is. I mean, you get like the chorus, which I do love, especially with the play on words that they use. It's hell on earth and the city's on fire. Inhale, there's heaven. And like after that, you get the lyrics. There's a bull and a matador dueling this guy, and I do like that a lot. So like, I feel like in context with "Be Yourself," connecting that to Solo, I thought that was pretty cool. And like just overall, outside of like the play on words that you find in the lyrics, because you also find that in the refrain of the word "solo," the title of the track here, solo, so low, like as in like feeling so low in yourself. I really did appreciate the lyric writing there. The whole underlayment with the church organ was very interesting. I do like that, and it's not the first time first and only time we're going to come across the church organ in this album, which is fun. And then just the way that you because the verses are rapped, but then in the chorus you get singing Frank, which I thought the switch up was executed really great. I do like the singing in the chorus, and especially at some points where you just get vocalizations. I think Frank is really nailing the notes there. But yeah, I'm a fan of Solo quite a bit. Maybe knocking it out of my top 4 because I do like it more than Pink and White, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm a fan of Solo quite a bit here.
I'm a fan of Solo too, and this track came dangerously close to entering my top 3 because of a lot of the reasons you mentioned with the lyrical wordplay, and not only the lyrical wordplay as far as the homonyms that are in there with the solo and the breathe. It's also the fact that these lyrics are relatively psychedelic and it fits so well once again with the music. And Frank, I think, sounds the best he's sounded so far on this whole album, just vocally. I think he sounds great vocally. Also, randomly, Andre 3000's playing the Beyonce role this time around. He's there, but he's not actually there, but he gets the credit anyway, so enjoy that paycheck. And the one other thing I did note, talking about the psychedelic themes of the song. So one of my comfort albums, or one of my sort of childhood go-to albums, is an album by Todd Rundgren called A Wizard, a True Star from 1973. On that album, there is a track called Flamingo, and I am almost 99.9% sure that it's sampled on this song. I don't know if they heard it or they just randomly thought, hey, that sounds psychedelic. But listen to that track. Listen to Flamingo by Todd Rundgren. Listen to Solo by Frank Ocean. And tell me you don't hear the former in the latter. Flamingo is just very much a psychedelic instrumental. And I hear textures that are not just similar to it, but almost exact. They are exact. And I'm thinking, I looked it up and I thought, clearly this must be a sample, but I didn't see anything. So I'm wondering if they just thought, hey, maybe this is a little too obscure, no one's going to notice, or they just magically matched the vibes of it. So I'm just throwing that one out there because I heard that a lot, and I was like, whoa. I thought I was the only one who knew about this song. But yeah. Solo's a really good song. I probably have it at number 4, ranking top to bottom. This track is really good.
Good. I'm gonna have to check out that Todd that track that you were mentioning. You'll have to send me a link after the episode recording here. All right, cool. So, are you ready to move on to the next section here, which is Skyline To?
Yes, Skyline To, and this track. Once again, we go back to the hazy summer vibes of some of the previous tracks, particularly Pink and White, and the track before that, which was Ivy. It's a very dreamlike track, like you mentioned, Ryan, another track where it's just production and Frank's vocals. And I didn't mind the track at all, but there were moments on the production front where the music teetered between dense vibes and very dense vibes, like too dense vibes. It just felt like everything was a little heavy and sort of designed to only be played during 5 gum commercials, which is not necessarily the worst thing, but at the same time, depending on your speakers, results may vary. I also thought that the vibiness of the track contrasted a little bit with the lyrics. The lyrics were very adventurous. There was a sense of adventure in the lyrics that I noticed that felt a little too adventurous for the vibiness of the track. I didn't hate this track by any means. It's not my other bottom track, but It's very album tracky to me. It's fine. It definitely brings back that theme of a guy lying in a pool on a hot summer day, trying to relax his mind and doing so by doing anything but relaxing his mind type of vibes, which is very much along the lines of what Blonde is.
And I think I'm right there with you, man, in terms of just over, like, I don't have a bottom track here, but Skyline 2 is definitely taking things down a peg. And I think the track was just long enough for me that I didn't officially in my mind label it as an interlude kind of track. So, like, spoiler alert, any track that is, like, basically almost like an interlude, it's not a bottom track or a top track for me. Uh, just the way that I roll in my life. Unless we're talking about Manchester Orchestra's Means Everything to Nothing. But, go check out that review to know what I'm talking about there. But with this track here, like, I feel like it serves as a excellent, like, rest stop between the previous song Solo and the next song Self Control. Because it feels like with this track here, just the lyrics are pretty vibey and they're pretty good, but it just seems like, according to, like, Genius.com as well, like, this is Frank expelling random thoughts that he's having, anything from sex to drugs, just like, and just having acts that, or like basically, that just slightly alters his mood. Yeah, like, I really don't have much else to say that you haven't already, touched on. I did like the faint guitar underneath. I thought that was a great touch in terms of just like the way that's executed in the track. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I got nothing else, man. So I think that I'm ready to move on to Self Control if I can be so indulged to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. We can move on to Self Control, and I believe it's your turn to kick things off.
Yes, indeed. And so, yeah, Self Control. What a beefer of a song. I just love this song so much because it feels like a cafe kind of song. What I mean by a cafe kind of song, like, you can just you can just picture, like, on a, like, summer afternoon. Frank is up there with an acoustic guitar at your local, like, coffee shop, and he's singing this song here, and it's so great. And what makes it even more authentic is the fact that the vocal strains that you hear throughout the track, like, they're pretty raw. Like, not powerful in the sense of, like, Adele being raw, but like it's not edited or processed down for any means. And I did love that. And just the oh man, and then outside of those moments, the introduction features this high pitched vocal effects that we've talked about through, like, several occurrences throughout this record so far. And here, the squeaky vocals are supposed to be utilized as like a tool for Frank to. It's him looking back, reminiscing on events in his youth. So I thought that was an excellent, like, use of the high pitched vocals there, and just the another section I got to talk about even before we dive into, like, the lyrics, which I'm not going to, like, spend 3 hours talking about. It's just the way that last section, like, how it transitions out of, like, the acoustic guitar singer songwriter kind of feel in a cafe coffee shop kind of thing to, like, you get that very smooth guitar coming in, and how that leads up to the end, where if you are driving during a sunset listening to this in your car, that is equivalent that is equivalent of having a big burly man slap you in the face with a fish, in terms of, like, a musical moment that will, like, just stay with you forever. It's, like, one of my favorite musical moments whatsoever. So I really do love that. And even on the lyrical front here, Self Control is another like heartbreak song where Frank is describing a relationship that is slowly falling apart. And one of my favorite lines here occurs in the second verse where Frank is singing, I came to visit because you see me like a UFO. That's like never because I made you use your self control and you made me lose my self control. Like I do like the tables turning there with the use of the word self control, and I also do like the I came to visit because you see me like a UFO, and that could be another hint or another theme of like Frank dealing what it's like to be in a hidden like homosexual relationship with a man because like maybe like this other partner in this circumstance doesn't acknowledge Frank out in public. So I mean, the reason why I just thought about that is within the past 24 hours, I watched Perks of Being a Wallflower with my wife Jamie. So like that theme has been kind of stuck in my head since just thinking about that right now. But yeah, dude, I love Self Control quite a bit. I don't know if you're able to tell, and it did pop into my top three at number two.
Number two in your top three. So we're not fighting. This is not my bottom track. However, I don't know if I heard the same song that you did because, first of all, I will say the one highlight of the track for me, well, there's a couple highlights. First of all, the singing is very good by Frank, and the outro to this track is just very nice. I like the outro a lot. But obviously, I'm not a huge fan of the pitch vocals at the beginning. Like, the second time I listened to this album, it didn't hit me as much as like, oh, those are pitch vocals, blah, blah. But I also didn't hear them and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. They're just like, it is what it is. But the one thing I did notice, more so the first time than the second time, is that for as good as Frank sings on this track, you mentioned how it feels very coffee-like. I did not get that effect at all. I thought the vocals were very processed and very pushing to the edge of the limits of audio recording. Like, it felt very boxed in. Now, granted, this may be another situation where, depending on your speakers, your results may vary. So again, second time around I listened to this song, none of those real flaws stood out to me, and this just sort of, flowed in and out as a pretty solid album track. So I don't mind this track at all. This track is pretty good. I wouldn't put it in my top half of the album, I don't think, but to me, it's a solid album track. It's a solid album track, and I can respect where you're coming from with it being in your top three.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm glad that we're not fighting in terms of self-control here. I think I was in terms of just feeling that whole singer-songwriter cafe effect. I again, to your point, your listening device might affect your perception of this track here, but I think I was just really taken back by the acoustic guitar strumming underneath and just the soulful nature of the track itself. And I think at the time when this album came out, the highlight of the track for me was that outro. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit, much higher on the track than you. Yeah, I got nothing else to really say about Self Control. I'm glad that we're not fighting though, because if this was your bottom track, which I'm curious to see what your bottom track is at this rate, because I really can't pinpoint a bottom track that I can't call from a mile away. But yeah, I think I'm ready to move over to Good Guy here if you are.
Yeah, I'm ready to move on over to Good Guy, and I really don't have a whole lot to say about this track either. I mean, it's very much a transitional skit like we've been talking about. I do like how the vocals are presented, though. I did think that the way that the different vocals come through, I think one's through a telephone and the other is from some other means. I did like how that was presented. I did like how that was recorded. I thought that was very technically uh, proficient. But aside from that, it's a transitional piece, and that's pretty much what I have to say about that.
And I'm right there with you, man. I mean, it's pretty cool in terms of like how it's recorded, and like in terms of just overall themes. Like the track basically just outlines a quick story of Frank going on a blind date with someone he met through a mutual friend, and during that outing, Frank discovers his partner's libertine character and realizes the intimacy shared between them is meaningless when Ocean was likely hoping for something more. So, and like this is also, it like the outro does briefly just like touch on homosexuality, how difficult and uncomfortable it can be to come out to people and fit in with straight friends. Um, it's a thoughtful look at two opposing like faces of modern masculinity. Yeah, again, it's interesting that this album came out in 2016. We're getting a lot of themes about like dealing with excess and loneliness and just the overall emptiness of the album, throughout like just themes and lyrical touches. And I I, I think it's kind of cool that, well, not cool, but it's very purposeful that there isn't a lot of musical, I don't want to say musical diversity, but it's a very lonely kind of feeling kind of album, and I love it, man. So, anyways, I'm ready to boogie on over to Nights. If you can so indulge me to like transition over to the next track here.
Yeah, and first of all, I do agree that a lot of this album is right up your alley with the way it is very stripped down to just bare bones backing and vocals. That is very much you, and I noticed that quite a lot throughout this album. But Nights, once again, goes into that mode. Goes into what I like to call the pool songs, where it feels very much guy floating in a pool, contemplating his life, and that's what Frank Ocean's doing a lot during this whole album. The lyrics seem very stream of consciousness, like it almost feels like a freestyle to a degree, like not so much that it seems very haphazard or raucous or just skill for the sake of skill, but it does feel very vibey. And I was like, okay, so this is going to be another one of those. And then it transitions in a very way that is can only be considered psychedelic. Like everything just slows down to a trickle when the instruments go away, and that just kind of goes into the second half of the song, which is just pretty much a solid mid 2010s R&B feel. I love the fact that he shouted out Shoney's of all places. Remember Shoney's? Like, I heard that, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, hello. I can tell what part of the country you are from by saying that very restaurant, because that hasn't existed in Western Pennsylvania in the better part of 30 years. Anyways, great breakfast buffet. But we're not sponsored by Shoney's. Anyways, but yeah, no, I dug this track quite a bit. Like, I dug it for what it was. A flip between the vibey part of the first half to the more modern R&B of the second half. I thought this was solid. It did not land in my top three, and it is not my bottom track either.
All right, good. So we're definitely not. Well, so far we're not going to fight, because this track did land in my top three. I'll reveal at the end where it did land in the spectrum, though. So I'll start with discussing the differences between like the opening part and the part two, for lack of a better descriptor there. So like the first part's supposed to like single like Frank basically going through just a drug high, living the nightlife as like one does, and that first part is really good. I think what makes me really appreciate the track to a T, like at least right out of the gate, is I really love the beat that is executed coming right out of the gate of this track. Like, it's so good. It's like honestly probably my favorite beat off the whole album. And Frank's delivery starting Out as well is really really good. And also also with this track here, especially at the start, you get those random stops, and oh my god, if dear listener and dear Matt, if you know me and my musical taste, if a track randomly stops, I'm like, oh, oh man, oh, I felt that in my soul. Um, and just outside of the first part though, I did like in the bridge, still within the first part, but kind of like almost like pivoting over to the second part where Frank is singing the phrase "New Beginnings," and fun fact that change in tempo and whenever he's singing "New Beginnings" is supposed to signify the halfway point of the album. So we've arrived at the halfway point officially, according to like Genius.com, and like the last third of the track, like for me, like I it's a little bit hit or miss in terms of just how I feel about it. Because at first glance, without really knowing the lyrical context behind the difference between the two parts, I thought the second half, part two, like it was a bit of a whiplash moment. Like it just basically like kind of came out of nowhere. And now, like officially where I'm landing on it, it's like I don't mind it's pretty cool. And the second part is supposed to, signify like parallel like the crash after you experience a drug high. Like the very first lyrics you hear in that second verse are every night fucks every day up, every day patches the night up. So like basically alluding to the fact like what you're doing during the night messes you up for the next day, and like you spend the day recovering for that so you can experience the night again. Yeah, a cool notion there. Yeah, and like the only other thing that I really did like, though, lyrically, was the line in the chorus: "Want to see Nirvana, but don't want to die yet." And like this is again parallel, like kind of talking about like drug use, like you want to experience, like you want to feel that high, but you don't want to experience it so much that you're gonna die. So I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah. Just overall though, like this track is supposed to, like, outside of the drug use and the coming down after the high. This track tells the story of Frank's previous relationship. Detailing the highs and lows that they both faced while dating. So yeah, really great track. And yeah, in terms of official rankings, this landed at number 3 for me. So it's not my favorite track, quite. Not, and I think what held it back from popping even like Self Control out of the top, the second spot, was just the beat switch up wasn't totally cohesive, and I think overall Self Control is the stronger track.
That's totally fair. And this is gonna be one of those tracks where we're gonna have to like go back and like listen to it to sort of get a full idea of all the elements that you're describing. Because to me, again, this was a good track, but it's in the sort of in the middle good track. Like it didn't really super stick out to me except for the transition in the middle of the track, as I had mentioned, and also again the random shout out to a restaurant that only exists in the South. So yeah, I dug Nights, and I'm glad that I can respect it being in your top 3 and number 3.
All right, so are you ready to boogie over to the back half of the album with the solo Reprise?
Yeah, we'll do this, and then we'll go to the halfway point of our review. Hint, hint. But yeah, no, solo Reprise. I only have one note about this track, and it's very simple. Dre still has it. What can I say? Like, the dude kills it. Like, he's just, for those who don't know, and I'm not sure why this track exists on this album, but I don't care. It's really good. It's not my top 3. I can't qualify it for a top 3 on a Frank Ocean track, considering he doesn't have a whole lot of Frank Ocean. It's mostly just an Andre 3000 cameo for no thing, but he just rips it like he's still got it all these years later. Like, this is 16 years after Stankonia, and he still just got the flow of a master. So yeah, I dug Solo Reprise for what it was, as random as it was.
I'm right there with you, man. Like that verse that Andre 3000 like ripped is just so good. And I'm gonna highlight like just one brief section in the track here. Like it starts out with Dre with a bar so low that I can see under the skirt of an ant, under the skirt, female. Like at this point, considering like we get a lot of themes in the album about like indulging in high life and like just really indulging in that materialistic life. As a man, like if you really like are that much into hedonism, you probably don't look at females in terms of like respectability. So like for that, like they might be looked as like smaller, like as ants here. So the reason why I want to highlight that bar is further on, like my favorite section in this whole track here is the section where Dre is saying, "Just saying it, we being real persons. I hate that it's like this. I feel for you, Aunt. I don't know what it's like with a skirt on. So pardon me if I'm being insensitive, but darling, this only worsens. So low," giving back into like the name of the track, and like we were talking about Solo and the previous iteration of like Solo itself. Solo, my halos stay way low. It feels like it's bent. So like this does feel like a bit of a crashing moment here, in terms of just acknowledging, again, trying to contextualize this within Frank's mindset, that he's really just realizing that he's barreling down a hole here. But yeah, overall, like one of the things I did appreciate about Andre 3000's verse here, and just his overall delivery from a fan's standpoint, is it's so well executed. The wording is so great, and you can understand literally everything that he is saying, and he's saying it like at a blistering speed. So hats off to him, man. I have nothing but praise for this song here.
Oh yeah, me too. Like again, Andre 3000. I know Outkast is probably never going to release anything ever again, and the only snippets of Andre 3000 skill are going to be pieces like this. And I'm grateful for that because, like you said, his technical skill, his articulation, and his wordplay are just so top notch on this track. And it's undeniable. Like he's still got it.
All right, cool. So, are you ready to go over to the next track here? You think we're ready to talk about some pretty sweet track here? Track number 11 in Blonde by Frank Ocean.
I think we are, but before we do, Ryan.
Yes.
I got a question for you.
What is that question?
Well, actually, I have two questions now. First of all, why are you going full Blair Witch on me? For those of you who can't see it on the Black Market cast. But secondly, if people are listening to this episode, they like what they hear, and they want to support us in this, hey, listen to this journey, which is now in the 80 amount of episodes, if you can believe it. How can they support us?
So, the number one way that they can really just support us is if you're organically discovering us via this episode here. Like Matt said, we have like 80 some episodes up to date. So like, scroll through the back catalog that we have and like, dive into like, different parts of our history and albums that we've covered. And I absolutely encourage you, if you guys spot an album or review that you're not familiar with the artist is and what the album is, check out the review. Well, first check out the album that we're covering. That way you have context for the review. But check it out. Expand your musical taste alongside us. And that helps us get picked up by the algorithm gods, depending on what podcasting platform that you're listening to us on right now. And what also helps us get picked up picked up by the algorithm gods is like, if you leave a positive review on the platform that you're currently listening to us on, and do whatever action you got to take to stay up to date with our episodes, whether like that's a subscribe on the YouTubes or like a follow on like any other podcasting platform of choice. Outside of the podcasting like audio sense of supporting us, if you want to stay up to date with our episodes even further and like just see about like the different content we're producing elsewhere, we have social medias. We're heavily in the metaverse with Facebook, Instagram, Threads. We are also in the Blue Skyverse, and all the taglines for those social medias are TT Hey Listen. And specifically, if you're looking to like do a request for an episode, we do have an email box, which is ttheylisten@gmail.com. Also, if you have a general question, you can feel free to shoot us an email there. It'd be cool to do a mailbag episode one day. That'd be cool. But yeah, that's primarily the way that you can help help support what we do on a week in, week out basis. And I'm very grateful for everyone's support. Like we've said multiple times in the history of the show, this is literally just two dudes talking about music. Original concept, never been done before, but I feel like we have good chemistry, and I'm happy to be part of this ride alongside Mr. Matthew here.
And I am happy to do this alongside Mr. Ryan, and I agree that'll be that might be something we need to flesh out sooner rather than later as a mailbag episode, because we talk about albums all the time, but someone's like, hey, what do you think of that new Sabrina Carpenter single, something like that, like we can have thoughts on that.
Yeah, true. So you ready to move over to Pretty Sweet?
I am ready to move over to Pretty Sweet.
So Pretty Sweet, it starts out at a pretty chaotic opening. And this is all centered around like the lyrics and what I heard as Frank saying, "You can't hurt me now," but I'm not actually. Oh yeah, no. Like looking at the lyrics right now on Genius.com, you get lyrics like, "You want to kill me now? Don't let me down," and you get on the first part. Frank saying I'm on this side, how it feels to have arrived. I'm inside. That's pretty cool. Because you get the break of the action there where things start to stop getting so chaotic, and you get a relief from the pressure there. That whole chaotic opening was directly inspired by the Beatles' Day in the Life, and Frank often has given a shout out to the Beatles to being hey, thanks for helping me break out of my creative slump there. So shout out to the Beatles. One day we'll do a review about the Beatles. We'll figure out the appropriate time to do that. But yeah, just outside of that, I don't really have too much more else to say it's a pretty brief track in its own right. I do like the Beatles nod and the lyrics where you get the divide there. I thought that was pretty cool, but it's a pretty cool track nonetheless, man.
So I have good news and I have bad news.
Oh, have we arrived, man?
We have arrived. The good news is we are not fighting. The bad news is this. Good. Yeah, the bad news is this track exists. Because I'm sorry, for as frustrating as the vocals were at the start of Nike's, they are nothing compared to the outright chaos of this. And I kind of understand the day in a life thing that he was going for, but it doesn't work for me at all. It just sounds very confused, and the first time I heard it, I couldn't understand anything. Second time I heard it, I was in my car. It sounded slightly better, but not better enough. I do agree that the middle part is the best part of this track, where it has that relief from the chaos. It just kind of almost feels like a almost groove metal type of track. And I thought, okay, maybe this track isn't that bad after all. And then it gets the outro with the children's choir, which I did not think was a good move either, because I don't know, it just felt like it didn't have any context. Like, it felt like it was a children's choir, but it was singing in a very abrasive, non-childlike way. So then why have it? It just rubbed me the wrong way all around. So yeah, I really don't have a lot else to say other than this track's garbage. I did not like it at all. So yeah, Pretty Sweet is my bottom track off of Blonde.
So I'm gonna support one of your claims in terms of like the one of the things that you said about this track being a negative, but I will say though I did like the inclusion of the children's choir. I thought that was that was a decent touch. Yeah, pretty higher on that moment than you are. But what I will say to add to your point, it's funny that when I opened up the discussion about this track here, I wasn't able to pinpoint like the opening section because I said like, oh yeah, you got Frank saying you can't hurt me now. He doesn't say that at any point in the opening lyrics here. I'm gonna spot check myself before I wreck myself here. Oh no, he does say that. Never mind. I digress. So like even the confidence that I didn't have in like identifying with the first part there, it does add to what you were saying. But yeah, I can support that. If this is if out of the remaining tracks here, if this is your bottom track, I guess I can co-sign that maybe a little bit.
You're gonna have to. I'm not changing it. It's there for a reason. Now, for those not keeping track, Ryan has yet to reveal his number one song. I have yet to reveal both my number one and my number three. So we have just a few tracks to go, and we're going to be heading into some territory here soon.
Yeah. But, the next track, which this would be funny if this was your favorite track coming up here. It's not my favorite track, spoiler alert, but yeah, it's Facebook Story, man.
Yeah, it is Facebook Story, and it's not my favorite track either, although I do appreciate it for what it is. It's basically just a side story about this guy who had a argument / breakup with his girlfriend because as she was standing in front of him asking him to add her on Facebook, and he said he wouldn't do it because she's right there. Why add you on Facebook when you're literally right there? Why should I have to interact with you virtually when you're right there in real life? It is a very interesting track on that premise alone, because that is a conversation that some couples and some friends need to have is, why should I have to follow you digitally when I could just do so in real life? And that goes with friendships, that goes with birthday greetings, that goes with a lot of different things. So I did like that. But as far as it adding context to the album, maybe. But on its own, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you, but for a different kind of twist on it. Like I did appreciate, and I did get the sentiment that this is a critique on the digitalization of human relationships. But dude, why are you being so weird with oh, like your girlfriend saying, "Hey, add me on Facebook." Oh, I don't want to add you on Facebook. Don't you understand how weird that is? Like, are you living like a double life, which is maybe I'm on the side of the girlfriend in this circumstance. Man, am I the problem? It's me. Oh man. The
AITA.
Yeah. But yeah, I get it, but it's weird. And I'm gonna move over to Close to You, which is another kind of interlude track. We kind of get two back-to-back interlude tracks here, leading up to White Ferrari. But yeah, this song here, Close to You, it's an interpolation of Stevie Wonder's cover of Close to You by Burke Bacharach and Hal David. I hope I got that Bacharach last name correctly because I very much focused on that. Yes, victory in Jesus. Oh man, my savior forever. so, um, it's pretty cool. I do like that. I do like the track. Uh, as a interlude, it's not one of my favorites, but maybe like if I can compare it to another one of the interlude tracks here, The Good Guy. They're they're basically kind of the same track. It's a mood transition point, and like it's interesting that we go from Pretty Sweet to Facebook Story to Close to You, going into White Ferrari, which like it's an interesting back half of the record so far.
Yeah, Close to You is, I agree, it's just another transitional piece on the uh, same level as Good Guy. The most interesting thing about it is the sample because it's to me it's interesting that he used a live version of a cover version of a Carpenter song that was written by David and Bacharach. Like that's just so many layers of how obscure a reference can we put in here. And I kind of dig that, but aside from that, I'm right there with you. It's not a nothing burger, but it's very much a transitional track, if nothing else.
All right. So you ready to move over to White Ferrari?
Yes, White Ferrari. And we get back into Frank plus production mode. There's not a whole lot of backing instruments aside from the, for lack of a better term, vibe track. But this is one where I think it really works a lot. I think the lack of percussion and the lack of any type of like rooted beat allows for the vulnerability of the lyrics and the vocals, for the matter, to be showcased. And this song teeters between memory and regret. It definitely has the same kind of vibes that we were hearing early on with like Ivy and Pink and White, where it feels like a Remember the Summer type of thing, but it feels a lot more ghastly and ghostly compared to that. And the vocals themselves from Frank tightrope between stream of consciousness vibes to very nervous, as in, oh crap, something has gone wrong and I'm not sure how to feel about it. And it's delivered so well. It's delivered so well. It feels like the layers on the vocals are doing the heavy lifting of this track, but they lift to their strengths. And it just, this is one of those tracks that, because whenever I was making my top three, spoiler, this is in my top three. Whenever I was making my top three, my basic thought was, okay, this is a very vibey album. What tracks really stand out? And this one did. Also, in the category of person that's there but not really there on the track, Kanye now enters the conversation. Hi, Kanye. Bye, Kanye. He is doing the background vocals, I guess, question mark. But that's aside the point. The point is, this track does sound very, very, very good. And I do have it in my top three at number 3.
So, yeah, Kanye West, how the have fallen. But yeah, so I am right there, pound for pound for you, man. Like, this is it's such a simple setup, but the way that the track is able to exemplify human emotion is just so goddamn beautiful. Again, it's one of the tracks, like, often, in our show here, we talk about, like, tracks that you could put on while you're driving and, like, flying down the interstate. But this is, like, right up there with, Self-Control at that ending point specifically, where if you're listening to this after, like, a long day at work and the sun is setting, like, it could hit you right in the feels based on, like, just how, like, that chorus comes across and just the overall feel of it. Like, it's so goddamn good. And just just outside of the specific feels and, like, other couple of the things I want to hit on that you didn't touch upon, like, at the start of the track, you get synths, but then you get switch up into the guitar during the verses, which I thought was very, very good. I did like that. That was very effective. the chorus is just so goddamn good. I just love it so much. And the back half, the vocals change for me, like from my listening ears. Like they get more sincere and introspective, and I just love it so much. I mean, it's an utterly heartbreaking song, and you can tell, like, especially like you were talking about, like, haunting moments. One moment that I did want to highlight here, because this does exemplify, like, again, like we talk about, like, homosexual, like, relationships and like just love in general. Like at the end of the first verse, you get Frank singing, "I let you out at Central. I didn't care to state the plane. Kept my mouth closed. We're both so familiar. White Ferrari, good times." And like at a casual drive by, it's just like, oh, well, that doesn't really mean anything. But like, you drill down to the phrase, "I didn't care to state the plane." The plane is that he really does care for this other person, and he's letting them out of his life, and he's in a tremendous amount of pain at that specific moment. I thought that moment was just a absolutely great highlight. um and just overall, like, it's just so goddamn good. It's so goddamn vibey. It's my favorite track off of the whole album. Like, when it came down to it, between this and Self Control, I had to think about what song did I overall feel exemplified emotion and lyric writing to a T. And this track just edged out Self Control just by a hair.
And that's a very strong endorsement for Self Control, honestly, because I hear it in this track. I hear the whole essence of this album in this track, doing such a good job that, yeah, like, the way you say that, it does make me want to go back and listen to Self Control too, to be like, hey, it does make me want to compare the two and be like, okay, here's what he heard here, and that's why, that track is on the same level as this one. But no, this track here, White Ferrari, just wow, good stuff. I have it at number 3. You have it at number 1. So yeah.
That being said, I feel like we're ready to boogie on over to Siegfried, and yeah, this is starting out the last leg of the record, at least in my mind. And yeah, just the way that the track, it's a pretty great track. We're getting themes, again, more so strongly here, about Frank rejecting the traditional American mindset and like what he thinks that he has to be programmed to, as a man in America, what he has to do. And this is exemplified in my favorite section in terms of lyrics here, and the second verse, when he's talking about, "I've been living in an idea from another man's mind. Maybe I'm a fool to settle for a place with some nice views. Maybe I should move, settle down, 2 kids in a swimming pool. I'm not brave. I'd rather live outside. I'd rather live outside. I'd rather go to jail." And like the concept to talk about, like, I'd rather live outside and I'd rather go to jail. That's him just saying, like, I'd rather break away from that. I'd rather like live an entirely different life. And like I did like that a lot. And like even outside of that lyrical moment, you get other moments like in that middle section where it gets a little bit moody, and he's saying, like, this is hold on one second here. "This is not my life. It's just a fond farewell to a friend." And for me, like, I kind of took that as Frank coming to terms with how he wants to live his life and who he once thought he had to be and who he wants to be. And a fond farewell to a friend of just his past life and who he wants to be right now. I thought that was an excellent moment, considering like the context again, of like sexuality and like just being on the pride spectrum, with Frank here. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, just and outside of those moments, the track starts out really great with Frank singing oh so well, and that faint electric guitar, like it's just a nice sprinkle in there, and like shout out to Frank, like with his use of like production here, because like we shouted out like Beyonce's in the track, Kanye's in the track, Andre 3000's all in tracks where they're featured in a background sense, but you can't tell that it's that person. And like that is very purposeful, very like intentional, and I like that. And you can see that in various moments throughout the record here. But yeah, I love Seigfried. It's an excellent way to kick off the last leg of the record.
I'm right there with you. I really liked how you mentioned the lyrics about not being brave and maybe just deciding to settle down instead, but he's not brave enough to do that, or he's not brave enough to confront his next phase of life. To me, this is him getting even closer to the edge that he was sort of establishing on White Ferrari. Like, this is him going from, uh-oh, something wrong has happened to, uh-oh, something wrong has happened, which he pulls off very, very well. It feels like desperation and exhaustion just throughout the entirety of the track, right down to the back half of it where it gets just basically confessional, saying, listen, I'm not even going to do the whole music structure thing. I'm just going to talk for a second here, which I dug that too. My only negative towards the song, not that it's a bottom track, it's still a very good track, but this is another one where I felt like the production in particular creates a situation where the results may vary depending on your speakers. Like, second time around, it just melted into the speakers and sounded fine. First time I was listening through the TV on YouTube, and it felt a little pushy. Like, it felt like some of the parts, whether it be the electronics or Frank's vocals, were maybe mixed a little too severe or maybe too high. But second time around, didn't sound so bad. So yeah, this is probably in the top half for me too. I think it's a great way to kick off this last leg of this album, or I should rather say transition from the realization of White Ferrari into deeper self-realization.
All right. So that being said, you ready to boogie into the penultimate track on the record, Godspeed?
Yes, the penultimate track, Godspeed. Now this is some good ass R&B. The way it starts out with just that very basic beat, and you mentioned how the church organ comes back in this album. It's back on this track for sure. It sounds so good. It didn't hit me until a couple minutes ago. It very much reminded me of Love Is a Game from Adele's 30, which we covered several months ago. And that was one of my favorite tracks off of that album. It reminded me of that here, especially the way it sort of swells in the beginning and then it drops to just the organ and Frank's vocals. And Frank, for the record, sounds at his absolute best here. Like, he sounds fully confessional. He sounds very in his emotions. He sounds, it drops out to the point where it's very much just him confessing what he needs to confess. And in between, you get these little like snippets of psychedelic pieces, particularly on the bridge, which I think is very trippy in all the right spots. And lyrically, I would say this is probably as dark as Seigfried, maybe a slight hair down in darkness, but it comes very close. And it comes very close to reaching that same level of confessionalism. But what sticks out to me on this track is just how good it is executed. The opening, great. Frank's vocals, great. And it's the track that, to me, really stood out among all of them at the end of the day. So, surprise, surprise, Godspeed is my favorite number one song off of Blonde.
Godspeed to Godspeed here for you, man. So, anyways, so I could respect that a lot. I feel like, yeah, no, I respect that wholeheartedly. I like Godspeed is going to go into a pretty growing bucket of songs. Like, I haven't talked about like the what's in this bucket so far, but like it could have popped into like a top 3 for me. Just the use of the church organ that you illustrated, that you talked about, I loved it so much. And like that also is only exemplified by Frank, like using religious imagery in the lyrics, like, saying like, let go of a prayer for you, the table is prepared for you. And in the chorus, he's saying, let me pull it up. Oh yeah, and in the second verse, he's saying, "Wishing you Godspeed, mountains to move for you," and yeah, yeah. Just there's a lot of religious imagery here. Another a thing that I did like it a lot. Like about this track a lot. Again, like one of my favorite sections was like I took this track again as like another track for Frank to say goodbye to who he was before and embracing his new life. And like one of my favorite sections here lyrically that, exemplifies this is this section in the second verse towards the end where he's saying, you'll look down on where you came from sometimes, but you'll have this place to call home always. And like even outside of like the context of like, Frank coming to terms with his identity, like you can even just expand that to like, just a world, like a bigger worldview. Because often sometimes it's like, yeah, us as humans, we maybe look down on our past, but at the end of the day, that's a place that we can call home. We can always return there to be safe. And it's just a place that, where you came from, and it's gonna always be familiar to you. So I did like that a lot. And just overall, as complete song package, it's a great song. Not much else that I could say or add to that you already haven't touched on. It's a great song nonetheless, man.
It is a great, great song. And again, just a stellar performance on production and vocals all around by everyone involved. So I am ready to move on to the closing track off of Blonde, which is Futura Free, if you are.
Yeah, so Futura Free. Another track that's divided into multiple sections. And like the first section, I feel like it's very stream of consciousness, very much Frank taking a little bit of I don't want to say a victory lap, but just like an acknowledgement of just where his life is and where it's going from now and everything like that. I did like the "let my nuts hang" line. That was pretty good. And also the section where they're talking about finding Tupac. I thought that was pretty good too. And especially where Frank's saying like, he evaded the press, he escaped the stress. And I feel like, maybe Frank sees himself and like somebody who wants to evade the press and escape the stress. Like I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, just the only other section I want to highlight is this line in this first verse is when he's saying, sometimes I feel like I'm a god, but I'm not a god. If I was, I don't know which heaven would have me, mama. They let me run this bitch. I'm gonna run it into the ground, mama. The whole galaxy. So like even Frank being like, sometimes I feel very high, but I'm not high. But even if I was like, in charge of everything, I'm gonna run it to the ground. Like a very bipolar-ish kind of feel, and I did appreciate that. And yeah, like again, this just seems like, again, Frank taking a little bit of a victory lap, and just like acknowledgement where he was at the time. And like this is like very much exemplified by the section where at the end of his vocal section he's saying, "You can change this track now. Could have changed this bitch a long time ago." So like, basically saying, "Hey, this is basically the end of the album here." And then outside of that, the second half, we get like on the street interview kind of section where you get somebody asking like very very grand questions like, who are you, what do you do, what's the most amazing thing you ever seen, like various questions like that. And I mean, I get it in terms of what they were trying to go for, trying to make it more authentic and like very much like Just like a more human element. But like I'll be honest with you, that second section kind of ruined the track a little bit because it didn't stick the landing. It's just it seems a little bit too much of a navel gazy, pretentious kind of moment to end off the album for me.
Yeah, my thoughts on Future Free. The first half, I agree that does feel very stream of consciousness. The track I was reminded of almost immediately listening to this was Wilshire by Tyler the Creator. Very much simplistic, just thought process of I'm just going to say what's on my mind and talk for a little bit. And the whole first part just feels like a stroll down memory lane set to a very, basic beat. But I do like that beat, though. That is a very solid beat to end the album on. But I really don't have anything else to add to that aside from what you said. And then the interview section, I didn't find it as artsy or pretentious as you did. I kind of understood what they were saying. This is very much the end credits after the end credits, if you will. Like, this is just, just B-roll, basically, is what this is. My only complaint is that I thought it sounded lousy. Like, I thought the production was not very good. Like, even for unearthed B-roll, this sounds pretty bad, but I'm not going to dock it because it is what it is. It's literally the end credits to this album as far as it goes. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the entirety of Future Free.
So yeah, so we hit the end credits of Blonde, and we've run out of Blonde to talk about. We have no more Blonde runway. So there's only one thing we have to say to finish off the discussion about the review here, and we can say those sweet, sweet words, my friend.
The sweet, sweet words. We did it.
We went up to Frank Ocean, and we wanted to experience a blonded life, and he told us what it meant to experience a blonded life.
Yeah, it's about as good as I was going to do. I was going to say we jumped into the Frank Ocean and came out blonde. So I mean, I thought yours is probably just as good.
So I'm gonna go first in terms of my overall thoughts and ratings here. Absolute blast of a record for me to revisit. Like full context, outside of a couple of the tracks that the top three that I mentioned, that being Nights, Self Control, and then White Ferrari, like. Those were the tracks prior to going into the review that stood out to me, but I'm glad that I was able to walk away from the review and really appreciate the somewhat deeper cuts off the record. Like you get the opening track, Nikes, Pink and White is a great track, and Solo's a great track, and Seigfried's a great track, Godspeed's a great track. We have a lot of great tracks here, and again, it's interesting in my head that this album comes after Channel Orange, where Frank essentially blew up in the public sphere, and how he reacted to that compared to how Kendrick Lamar reacted to his explosion into fame, going from Good Kid, Mad City into Pimp a Butterfly, totally two different reactions. One day we'll talk about Kendrick Lamar. We hint at that at several times in our show here. But one day we will. But here you get a lot more introspection, a lot more Frank coming to terms with his identity, and just embracing who he is as a person, while looking fondly and with a blue tint of hey, summer's over, and just the good times are over, and just childhood is over, and this good part of my life is over in terms of different parts of relationships. Executed to a T. I can't give this album a 10 out of 10, only because there's some moments where it does become a little bit too much of a navel-gazy kind of album. Like I mentioned in Futura 3, that second half, it's hit or miss for me. And I did appreciate what Pretty Sweet was bringing to the table, but it was just okay. And some of the interlude tracks, while I don't rate them per se, they get a little weird, like Facebook Story. But nonetheless, I do love this album quite a great deal, and I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10.
9.5 out of 10. That's a beefer. That is a beefer. I'm not quite as high on this album as you. I did like it. I did appreciate what it was, which was very much a it's very set in vibes. Like, there are a lot of tracks that range from moderately vibey to very vibey, and to varying degrees of success as well, where you have songs like White Ferrari and Godspeed that just jump out of the speakers at you and set themselves apart, to songs like Nikes or Pretty Sweet, which do the same exact thing in the opposite direction. And everything else in the middle just really flows so well. Like, that is the one strength and weakness of this album, is how good it flows. Like, it almost flows too well to me, like to the point where it gets very hard to really focus in on what is being said and being sung, because it just feels so floaty and so relaxing. But overall, I did like the project quite a bit, and I did come away with a stronger respect for Frank Ocean and what he was going for here, especially with the discussion that we had. But I'm going to stick to my original rating, and I'm going to give Blonde a 7 out of 10.
All right, so this is the first time we're going to have to math in a long time. So, my 9.5 and your 7 average out to be what's the average there, man? I'm not that good at math on the fly.
That's okay. Again, I had a brother who majored in math and is teaching math, so I know this off by heart. So 9.5 plus 7 equals 16.5. Cut that by 2. You get 8.25 as our average, because
math
works, everybody.
So, in terms of next album recommendations here, I'm going to keep it super easy. Easy as Sunday morning. Easy as listening to White Ferrari on a drive home after work. And I'm just going to go Channel Orange by Frank Ocean, because it's basic math here. I mean, if you really want to dive deep, check out Nostalgia Ultra by Frank Ocean, his debut mixtape. But, I have not listened to that, so I'm going to recommend Channel Orange by Frank Ocean.
I thought about recommending Channel Orange, but I haven't listened to that album in so long I couldn't rightly bring myself to do it. I also thought about recommending Igor, but I've done that 1,000 times, and that's way too easy. Instead, I'm actually going to recommend a mixtape, and it's not by Frank Ocean, because the overall vibe of confidence mixed with marijuana references and consistent R&B very much reminded me of a mixtape from 2010, which sent another rapper into superstardom, and that is the 2010 mixtape Kush and Orange Juice by Pittsburgh's own Wiz Khalifa. And I was reminded of that mixtape several times because, again, it just has that very summery, just out of school, lounging in the pool, thinking about life type of vibe. Wiz's lyrics are not nearly as thoughtful as Frank's, I will say that. But just on pure vibes, that was the closest comparison I could come up with. So Kush and Orange Juice by Wiz Khalifa is my next recommendation.
Both have the the word orange in the projects there. So, ladies and gentlemen, our average rating for Blonde by Frank Ocean turned out to be an 8.25 out of 10. And my next album recommendation was Channel Orange by Frank Ocean. And Matt's next album recommendation was Kush and Orange Juice by Wiz Khalifa. So yeah, check out those projects if you enjoyed Blonde by Frank Ocean. And yeah, that basically puts a wrap on Blonde by Frank Ocean. And yeah, what a fun review, and what a different review compared to like the previous two that we've already done here.
Yeah,
for
very
Pride Month here.
Yeah, that's true. We've gone down a few different avenues with Pride Month so far. We've gone from hard rock to very pop to a mix of R&B and hip hop on this latest adventure.
So that being said, um, what's the next avenue we're going to go down for next week's review, man? Because it is your turn to pick.
It is my turn to pick. It is the final pick of Pride Month. And once again, I'm going to go full Captain Phillips with this because I thought about it. Like, we've done R&B, we've done rock and roll, and we've done pop. And I say we end this month by doing an album that can be classified as all three. And an album that also fits into the context of being performed by someone who fits under the Pride Month category. There is one twist, however, Ryan. Do you know what that twist is?
What is that twist, man?
It is going to be the oldest album that we have yet to cover.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Okay, anyways, I thought we were going down a different avenue here, man. I already started writing my notes here for the next review, but yeah. What is the album?
Okay, before I reveal it, what were you thinking I was going to say?
Igor by Tyler the Creator.
Okay, so I thought about that, and again, we will talk about that album one day. But to me, that just felt a little too easy and too obvious for a selection on my end. So I did a little research, and I thought, okay, let's switch things up a lot. Let's go all the way back to 1956. And we're going to be covering the album that is entitled Here's Little Richard.
Oh, okay. Cool. So, I'm excited, man. So, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it's by Little Richard, right?
Oh, yeah. Lest anyone think otherwise.
Yeah, that would actually be interesting if it was just by somebody else not named Little Richard. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you've not checked out Here's Little Richard by Little Richard, make sure you check out that album before next week's review. That way you have opinions about the album, and you're going to have opinions about opinions that me and Matt are bringing to the table. But yeah, I can't wait to talk about some Little Richard for to finish off our Pride Month discussion for 2025, man.
Me neither, man. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm just going to leave the listener with some good, solid advice, if you can indulge me, man.
Sure.
Be yourself, and know that's good enough.